Chapter 968. Medicine Bottle. Soft Bun is pregnant, so why would she take medicine? Without much thought, Lin Jierge took out the medicine bottle from his bag. Lamine tablets were mainly used to treat headaches. It was one of the cheapest and most common medicines available, but taking too much of it could lead to death. If one were to gulp down this entire bottle of medicine, one would surely die if they weren't saved in time. Putting aside the fact that Shi Yao didn't suffer from headaches in the first place, it was impossible for her to consume such medicine due to her pregnancy. So, why would she carry such a bottle of medicine around with her? There was a thin plastic bag on the outside of the medicine bottle, and Lin Jierge saw a loan receipt inside. He took it out, and after seeing the date and time printed on the receipt, he understood everything. This medicine was bought last month. On the day of his surgery, he was pushed into the operating theater at 10:21 p.m. for his second surgery, and this medicine was bought at 10:45 p.m. When she visited him in the ward, she had always been fine. She even consoled him, telling him that he would be fine and that the surgery would be a success. She even said some vague words, such as saying that she believed in him and that he was blessed with great fortune. Seeing that she was in a good state, he thought that his grandfather and the others had comforted her. It was only at this moment that he realized that she had already made up her mind before entering the ward to visit him. If anything were to happen to him, just as the doctor had said, and he was unable to get off the operating table, she would accompany him to the afterlife. He had already come to know the meaning of suicide for love since he was very young. Perhaps it was because he was a man that he was more interested in conquering the world, astronomy and physics, so even though he knew about it, he would only scoff in disdain when he saw stories about suicide for love. Those were nothing more than fictitious stories written in novels. There was no such beautiful thing as staying together in life and death in reality. But now the scene that he believed the most had happened to him. An indescribable feeling of gratitude welled up in Lin Jierge's heart. He thought that if the same danger were to befall Shi Yao one day, he would do the same too. After all, they had promised to be together through life and death. The door to the washroom suddenly opened and Lin Jierge raised his head to take a look. It was Shi Yao. He hurriedly pretended not to see anything and stuffed the bottle back into his bag. When Shi Yao was done washing her hands, she walked over to Lin Jierge's side, and Lin Jierge naturally grabbed her hand. The car was parked in a parking lot roughly 500 meters away from the restaurant, and the two of them leisurely strolled along the roadside toward the parking lot. Even though Lin Jierge appeared to be calm on the surface, his heart was in turmoil because of that bottle of medicine, and it took a long time for him to calm down. He couldn't help but squeeze Shi Yao's hand as he asked, "Yao Yao, a month ago on the night of my surgery, were you scared?" "Afraid, extremely afraid." But Shi Yao shook her head and said, "There's nothing to be afraid of. I'm very calm. I'm so pretty, so even if something were to happen to you, I won't have to worry about finding a new boyfriend." Lin Jierge didn't expose Shi Yao's hypocrisy. Holding her hand, he continued walking forward. Chapter 969. Shi Yao's heart softened to the extreme. From the time Grandpa Lin came knocking on her door when she was 13, and he pointed at her and said, "Shi Yao, that's your fiancé Lin Jierge." To this day, they were walking hand in hand on the streets to welcome their wedding tomorrow. They had experienced many things together. While they weren't anything earth-shattering, every single one of them had made her laugh or cry, and they were all precious moments to each other. Rather than saying that their story had started when she was 13, it could be said that their story had started from the message she had sent him during the second semester of her freshman year. With such thoughts in mind, Shi Yao's eyes began to heat up. She tried her best to curl up the corners of her lips before turning to Lin Jierge and asking, "Lin Jierge, why don't we call off our engagement?" In the instant that she spoke, Lin Jierge, who was holding her hand, also turned to her and said, "Shi Yao, shall we annul our engagement?" "Sure." Hearing the other's voice, the two of them burst into laughter before saying in unison, "Let's get married." The wedding was a traditional Chinese wedding. Every single step of the ceremony was meticulously planned. Since it was the day before their wedding, Lin Jierge and Shi Yao couldn't stay together. Their original plan was to have Shi Yao stay at Lin Jierge's place. The next morning, Lin Jierge set off from the Lin family mansion to pick up his bride. However, this arrangement was vetoed by everyone in the Lin family, using Shi Yao's pregnancy as an excuse. Thus, Lin Jierge stayed at his apartment while Shi Yao stayed at the Lin family mansion. So, after dinner, Lin Jierge drove Shi Yao back to the Lin family mansion, But before he could even step through the door, he was chased away by his own grandfather, father, mother, aunt, father, and sister, using the excuse that the bride and groom shouldn't be together on the first night of their wedding. Lin Jie stood at the entrance and looked at the house he had grown up in, looking at the bright lights and the double happiness characters on the windows. He stood there for a moment with a mixture of joy and worry in his heart before he got into the car and returned to his home alone. As Shi Yao was pregnant, she didn't have to attend to the wedding. It didn't take long for everyone to urge her to return to her room to rest. Returning to the bedroom that Lin Jie had slept in since he was young, Shi Yao found herself lying on the bed, unable to fall asleep at all. How could she possibly fall asleep? Tomorrow was the day of her and Lin Jie's wedding. No, to be more exact, there were still 2 hours and 7 minutes left until the day of their wedding. In the end, Shi Yao simply couldn't fall asleep, so she didn't force herself. She took out her phone and logged into the game that she hadn't played since she got pregnant. She didn't actually want to play the game. She just wanted to explore the game's setting. In the end, not long after she was successfully matched, a notification appeared on her screen. 111,111 knocked out. Don't hit super cute me with M416. 111,111. This name sounded so familiar. Wasn't he her boyfriend? Shi Yao was pleasantly surprised by this mysterious fate. She took a screenshot and sent it over to Lin Jie's WeChat. Not too long later, Lin Jie replied to her message. Where are you? Chapter 970. In the game, even if they weren't teammates, they could still hear the conversations of the people around them if they got too close. Upon hearing Lin Jie's voice, Shi Yao immediately jumped down from the room where she was looking for equipment. She circled around the house and by the roadside she saw Lin Jie sitting on a motorcycle. Hugging her gun, Shi Yao ran over eagerly and asked, little brother, do you want to form a party? Lin Jie's light chuckle sounded from the other end of the earpiece. Following which his voice sounded, get on. Shi Yao followed Lin Jie's instructions and got on the motorcycle. Lin Jie stepped on the accelerator and drove her along the map in the game. Eventually he stopped in the vicinity of the airport. Shi Yao was just about to ask Lin Jie what he was doing at the airport when Lin Jie's voice sounded in her earpiece. Do you still remember this Dugga? Shi Yao was taken aback for a moment and she replied with a doubtful Back then, when a certain someone was parachuting, he hung on this Dugga and fell to his death after jumping off. Hearing Lin Jie's voice, Shi Yao finally understood what Lin Jie was trying to say. She couldn't help but pout as she continued. You still have the cheek to bring up that incident? Do you know that it was the first time I played this game? That night I turned into many crates when I landed on the ground. Left with no other choice, I chose to play Squad 4 and I ended up falling to my death. Indignant, I begged you for help, but not only did you not save me, you even drove the motorcycle in the opposite direction. Hearing Shi Yao's complaint, Lin Jie chuckled softly. If I had known that the girl who fell to her death was my wife, I would have rushed over to save her without her asking. Hearing Lin Jie's words, Shi Yao couldn't help but chuckle. Her tone became much gentler. That was the first time we met in the game. Now that I think about it, it's been 3 years since then, but it still feels like yesterday. That's right. Lin Jie replied. After which the two of them fell silent. Half a minute later, Lin Jie spoke up once more. Let's get on the motorcycle. Shi Yao obediently got into the car, and Lin Jie drove her to another location. This time, before Lin Jie could say anything, Shi Yao had already spoken up. I remember this place. It was here that our team was wiped out by justice from the heavens. Back then, experts said that my voice was pleasant to the ears, so he asked you if it was true. You said that it was just like that, and experts said that justice from the heavens would descend upon us if we didn't mean what we said. In the end, you still said that it was just like that and you were blown to death. By the time Lin Jie reached the third location, Shi Yao realized that Lin Jie wasn't trying to form a party with her. Instead, he was bringing her along to relive the events that had happened in the game over the past few years. On a hill near Pochinki, Lin Jie said, when you were shot dead by a sniper and you were screaming about how you died, I was the one who jumped to your side to save you. I even tossed some medicine into your wound. In Roshawk, Shi Yao said, I remember that I was run over by someone as soon as I landed here. You chased that person across half of the map and killed him. After that, you ran over to my side and died as well. Tell me honestly, Lin Jie, were you suicidal back then? Chapter 971. On the bridge next to the airport, Lin Jierge said, "I'll teach you how to kill people here. We've left a lot of things on the ground and when someone comes to pick them up we'll shoot them." Lin Jierge drove Shi Yao around the map and they found something that left a deep impression on them at every corner of the map. It was only at the very end when the two of them were poisoned to death that Shi Yao and Lin Jierge finally left the game. It was already late, so Shi Yao and Lin Jierge didn't continue playing anymore. After bidding each other good night, they lay down on their respective beds. In the Lin family's old residence, Shi Yao recalled the scene with Lin Jierge in the game, and she couldn't help but burst into laughter. Who could have thought that the Adonis she admired so much when she was young would end up becoming her husband? In the 21st floor apartment, Lin Jierge stared at the ceiling with his arms as a pillow, but he didn't feel the slightest bit sleepy. Who could have thought that soft bun, who was even worse than a robot in the game, would end up becoming his wife? Early the next morning, Shi Yao was woken up by someone before 5 o'clock. As bridesmaids, He Tian Jiang Yu and Leng Nuan had already arrived at the Lin family's old residence. Under the accompaniment of the makeup artist and stylist, they helped Shi Yao change into her gown. By the time they were done, the sky was already bright. The sun hung high in the sky, illuminating the world. At 9:20 a.m., the deafening sound of firecrackers echoed from the entrance of the Lin family's old residence. Shi Yao knew that Lin Jierge had come to fetch her. Her head was covered with a red veil so she couldn't see anything clearly. However, as she listened to the sound she couldn't help but feel nervous. Even her palms, which were holding onto an apple, were covered in a layer of sweat. The commotion outside grew louder and louder. Chaotic footsteps could be heard rushing toward the room she was in. Even though the footsteps were chaotic, Shi Yao could still tell that the one walking with the steadiest footsteps was Lin Jierge's. However, before Lin Jierge could enter, he was stopped by the bridesmaids at the entrance. He Tian and Jiang Yu had always been the best at causing trouble. Even though Shi Yao couldn't see the commotion from their conversation, she could tell that the groomsman, Xia Shangzhou, was forced to change into a pink lace muslin dress. Lu Benlai was forced to imitate a female voice and sing a song, and Liang Jisi was forced to eat 10 steamed buns before the bridesmaids finally relented. They stretched out their hands to ask Lin Jierge for a red packet. A thick stack of red packets flew out from Lin Jierge's hand and scattered all over the floor. While everyone was bending over to snatch the red packets, Lin Jierge had already rushed into the room and stood before Shi Yao. Leng Nuan brought over a pair of wedding shoes, and Lin Jierge knelt down on one knee before Shi Yao to help her put on the shoes. After which he stood up and carried Shi Yao in his arms. Amidst the commotion and screams, he walked out of the bedroom, down the stairs to the second floor, and out of the old manor to the bridal car. The car door opened and Lin Jierge carefully placed Shi Yao inside before climbing into the car as well. At 11 o'clock, the bridal car arrived at the Beijing World Hotel punctually. In the largest suite on the top floor, Lin Jierge and Shi Yao served tea to Grandpa Lin and Lin Gu before collecting their red packets. After which, accompanied by her bridesmaids, Shi Yao went to change into her wedding dress and touch up her makeup. On the other hand, Lin Jierge and the groomsmen headed to the hotel's main entrance to welcome the guests who had just arrived. At 11:48, Shi Yao walked down the stairs accompanied by her bridesmaids. I think anyone would hope that they would be the one to pinch the peach blossom in the end, right? The male host. Romance is romance. Fortunately, the groom didn't use too much force when he pinched this peach blossom. If he had used too much force, he might have crippled himself. That wouldn't be fun. As the entire hall burst into laughter, the male host asked the second question. Groom, we all have a special title for the person we like, which is a nickname for short. May I ask what the groom calls the bride? Chapter 973. Lin Jierge's answer left everyone stunned. Roughly 10 seconds later, the male MC spoke up. Can the groom explain why he's calling the bride 21? Lin Jierge pondered for roughly 5 seconds before replying. The stroke of deeply in love is 21, and the stroke of bliss is 21. Shi Yao's stroke is also 21, so the meaning behind 21 is that Shi Yao is deeply in love and bliss. Standing behind Shi Yao, He Tiantian couldn't help but exclaim in agitation. Wah, I didn't expect Senior Lin to have such a flirtatious side to his aloof and virtuous bones. At the same time, the MC in the wedding hall also chimed in. The male MC, to tell you the truth, I've hosted at least 800 weddings if not 1,000, and I'm definitely the only one who's as handsome and romantic as the groom. As the female MC spoke, Shi Yao suddenly recalled the summer break 2 years ago. She received a call from Sis Jai, and upon learning that Lin Jierge had lost his phone and wallet, she ran out to pick him up from the streets. He didn't have an identification card, so he had no choice but to stay in her room that night. That night she had fallen asleep on the sofa, but she was woken up by him hugging her. She didn't open her eyes and continued to pretend to be asleep. He leaned over to her and whispered a lot of things into her ear. He said, "It's a pleasure to meet the girl I like." He even said, 21, 21, 21. Back then she was still wondering if he had gone mad. Why did he keep calling her second aunt? It was only at this moment that she realized that he hadn't called her second aunt that night but 21. Deep love, bliss and Shi Yao. As these thoughts flashed across Shi Yao's mind, memories of her past flooded her mind like a tidal wave. The scenes of the past flashed before her eyes frame by frame like a slow-motion playback of a movie. On her birthday, Qin Yiran called a bunch of men to block the both of them. Without any hesitation he pushed her out of the courtyard house and used his body to block the door. On Mother's Day, Liang Mumu completely fell out with her. While she didn't suffer any grievances, she still felt a little sad. After parting with Jiang Yu, he was the one who called her. He didn't say anything, but he carefully accompanied her. He even called Lu Benlai, Xia Shangzhou and Sis Jai over to sing a song so as to cheer her up. As these scenes of the past flashed before Shi Yao's eyes, she heard the MC speaking once more. "This is the final segment. If everyone here is satisfied with the groom's answers, we'll be welcoming the bride onto the stage." The male host cooperated and continued. "The last question is, would the groom please give a speech?" When he confessed to her that he liked her, she asked him if he was serious. He said yes, he was serious about liking you. In Chengdu, when she had a stomachache in the middle of the night, it was him who carried her to the hospital without even putting on his shoes. While Shi Yao was still reminiscing about the past, Lin Jierge suddenly raised the microphone and spoke up. His voice carried a rare seriousness and sincerity. "I've only dreamed of 2 things in my life. One is Shi Yao and the other is Shi Yao's time. Many days ago I've always wanted to say something to Shi Yao, but it was only many days later that I was finally able to say it." Shi Yao turned her head to look at Lin Jierge, and the bliss in her eyes seemed to be on the verge of bursting out. "I'm willing." Another round of thunderous applause rang out. However, after the wave of applause quieted down, the host opened his mouth to ask a new wave of questions instead of asking the couple to exchange rings. "We've just interviewed the groom, but we haven't interviewed the bride yet. So before exchanging rings, we need to interview the bride and groom." Hearing those words, Lin Jierge blinked his eyes a few times, then a few more times. Chapter 975. The male host. We all know that the destiny between the bride and groom begins in the game. So, can the bride and groom use a phrase related to the game to describe what you would like to say to the other party? Ah, whose question is this? You're clearly making things difficult for me. Shi Yao pondered for a moment before turning to the male host and asking, "Is the line in the game fine?" The male host, "Sure." Hearing that answer, Shi Yao tilted her head and pondered for a moment before saying a line from King of Glory. 10 li of flowers is not many, but 1 beauty is just right." Shi Yao's words caused the entire crowd to burst into laughter. The female host also laughed along. "The bride sure is adorable. This is the first time I'm seeing a bride referring to the groom as her beauty." The crowd burst into laughter once more. When the crowd finally calmed down a little, the host passed the microphone back to Lin Jierge. Lin Jierge took the microphone and without much hesitation he said calmly, "I'm willing to be your level 3 Spetsnaz helmet. Even if it's ruined, I'll still be able to block a fatal shot for you." The female host exclaimed in astonishment, "The groom can do it." The male host clapped his hands. Then he took a look at the questions written by his friends and family before saying, "Second question. What are the 3 phrases that the other party said that left the deepest impression on you?" Once again the microphone was passed to Shi Yao. She tilted her head and pondered for 3 seconds before saying, "First question, what are we having for dinner today? Second question, what else do you want to eat? Third question, are you hungry?" Shi Yao's reply had already amused the crowd beneath the stage, and they were already rolling around in laughter. Lin Jie, who was already used to this, took the microphone and calmly said, "First, those who eat my sweets are my people. Second, those who hold my hand are my dogs. Third, Lin Jie, I'm Shi Yao." When Lin Jie said the first two sentences, the crowd beneath the stage burst into laughter. However, by the time he reached the third sentence, the crowd beneath the stage couldn't find anything funny at all, and their laughter quieted down significantly. However, Shi Yao suddenly turned her head to look at Lin Jie. Back then, when Lin Jie was on the verge of strangling Han Jing to death, she had rushed over and said those words to him. It was those words that had saved him as well as her and him. Otherwise, if he had really caused something to happen to Han Jing, who knew what kind of situation they would be in now? While Shi Yao was still deep in her thoughts, the MC brought up the third question. The third question. Let's have the newlyweds say a threatening word of endearment to one another. Shi Yao took the microphone, blinked her eyes and said, "I want to be your son. When I'm happy I'll warm you up. When I'm not happy I'll scorch you to death." Chapter 976. Alright, the last question is for the bride. The groom has just given a speech, so what does the bride have to say to the groom on such a memorable day? Shi Yao held onto the microphone and pondered for roughly half a minute before she said, "I would like to say a sentence and a poem." The sentence is, "The world is filled with all kinds of flavors, thank you for the sweetness you gave me." The poem is a 3-line love letter. The first line is Lin, the second line is Jia, and the third line is Ge. Indeed, the most beautiful 3-line love letter is nothing more than your name. Finally fulfilling the wishes of all the guests present, the MC had the bride and groom exchange their rings, and after that the bride and groom kissed. Shi Yao thought that Lin Jie would only touch the surface of the water, but who could have thought that he would actually shamelessly stick his tongue into her mouth in front of all the guests? She tried to struggle free, but he seemed to have predicted it and he hugged her even tighter. Resigned to her fate, she gave up. Amidst the cheers of the crowd, 2 words flashed across her mind. "Thank you. Thank you, Lin Jie. Thank you for coming into my world that year. And thank you for falling in love with me that year too." A second after Han Jing alighted from the car and landed at the entrance of China World Hotel Beijing, he saw a familiar name written on the plaque surrounded by fresh flowers. Lin Jie, Shi Yao. It had been many days since he last returned to Beijing. If not for a performance, he probably wouldn't have stepped into Beijing. Perhaps there was an arrangement in the unseen world? Otherwise, why would he coincidentally run into their wedding scene when he arrived today? "Han Jing, what are you looking at?" Han Jing's colleague who was performing with him asked when he stopped in his tracks. Han Jing didn't say a word. Instead, his colleague walked up to him and saw him staring at the wedding plaque. He couldn't help but ask, "Do you know them?" Han Jing recovered from his daze and shook his head. "I don't." Then he carried his luggage into China World Hotel Beijing, checked in and entered his hotel room. There was a joyous occasion to be held today, so there were wedding candies placed in the hotel room. Han Jing subconsciously threw the wedding candies into the bin, but a moment later he picked them up again. He tore open the package and stuffed a piece of candy into his mouth. The candy was sweet, but his heart was filled with bitterness. Have you ever done something that you regret the most? Do you think about it in your dreams at night and you are constantly annoyed? He really liked her. He liked her down to his bones, but he also felt sorry for her. He had never done anything particularly wrong in his life. The only mistake he had made was for her. Yes, his colleague asked him if he knew them and he said he didn't. Chapter 977. When Leng Wan walked out of the washroom, she didn't notice Lu Benlai walking out from the men's washroom. Upon seeing her, Lu Benlai subconsciously halted his footsteps. Today was Lin Jie and Shi Yao's wedding, and as the groomsman he had to attend to many of their classmates and business partners. It was indeed rather busy, so even though the two of them had met several times already, neither of them had spoken to the other. Upon seeing her, Lu Benlai instinctively moved his lips. The word Nuan that he had called out to her countless times in the past felt like a heavy lead stone pressing down on his lips, preventing him from spitting it out. In the end, he still didn't have the courage to do so. For example, over the past month he had tried countless times to look for her, but he had always given up on the idea because he didn't dare to do so. Even when she came to look for him, he was blocked by someone, and he didn't dare to pick up her call either, because he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to hold himself back and ask about her past. Yes, everyone had a past, but he was afraid that the words she would tell him would be an outcome that he didn't dare to face. He was afraid that she really loved someone else in the past, afraid that she really didn't love him, and that's why she kept her distance from him. Staring at Lung Wan's back, Lu Benlai's Adam's apple bobbed up and down several times. In the end, he swallowed the words that he was about to call out to her. She didn't notice him, and soon she disappeared into the washroom. As if someone had struck his acupoints, Lu Benlai froze on the spot for a moment before walking over to the sink and turning on the tap. After returning to the wedding banquet hall from the washroom, Lu Benlai subconsciously looked around, but Lung Wan was nowhere to be seen. He thought that she might have returned to the bride's room, so he quickly gathered his thoughts from their earlier encounter in the washroom and continued helping Lin Jierge send the guests off. As Lung Wan walked out of the Beijing World Hotel, she turned around to look at the lavish hotel lobby behind her, as if she was looking at her past through the luxurious scenery. It was only when her car, which had been waiting for her for too long, impatiently honked its horn that Lung Wan retracted her gaze, opened the car door and got in. The car door closed and the driver immediately started the engine. As the car drove off, Lung Wan caught a glimpse of Lu Benlai and Lin Jierge walking out of the elevator with a few brightly dressed men through the windows of the hotel and through the windows of the hotel. Lu Benlai was so focused on talking to the person beside him that he didn't notice the car at the entrance. Lung Wan didn't respond at all. She simply sat calmly in the car, quietly staring at Lu Benlai. Soon the car arrived at the roadside and Lu Benlai walked out of the revolving door and stood at the entrance of the hotel. Lung Wan swiftly turned her head around, but she only managed to catch a glimpse of Lu Benlai through the window before the car made a turn, and his silhouette disappeared from her sight. She knew this was the last time she would see him. She knew that after this farewell they would probably never meet again in this lifetime. As it wasn't a weekend, the traffic wasn't too bad in the afternoon. It didn't take long for the car to arrive at Lung Wan's place. She asked the driver to wait for her downstairs for a while and went upstairs alone. Not long after, she came back down with 2 suitcases. After returning to the car, the driver asked, "Beijing International Airport." Not only did he not remember how he got home, he couldn't even remember when he took off his clothes. Vaguely, he remembered that he seemed to have done something with a woman, but his house was empty. Other than him, there were no other clues. He thought that it was a dream. But now Little Chen told him that Lung Wan had sent him home yesterday. With this thought in mind, Lu Benlai asked, "When did she leave last night?" Chapter 979. As Little Chen spoke, he had Lu Benlai wait for a moment before running back to his desk. He took out an envelope from his drawer and passed it over to Lu Benlai. "This is what Miss Lin gave me. I was quite curious, so I asked her why she didn't send you upstairs. She said that the taxi she called had been waiting for a long time, and she was in a hurry to leave." Lu Benlai didn't respond to Little Chen's prattling. Instead, he squeezed the envelope and he felt something hard. A slight frown appeared on his forehead. As if sensing something, he tore open the envelope and saw a bank card and an access card inside. The bank card was his secondary card, and he insisted on giving it to her, even though she had never spent a single cent from it. The access card was the key to his building, and he had only given it to her. Back then, when he bought the apartment, he had thought that she would be the only female owner of the building. What did she mean by returning these things to him? Was she intending to break up with him and cut all ties with him? But last night she had gone upstairs and she had even stayed there for a very long time. Thus, what he thought was just a wet dream wasn't a wet dream at all, but something that had really happened. With such thoughts in mind, Lu Benlai's chest suddenly burned with rage. How could she do this? Is she going to go back on her word after sleeping with me? "Mr. Lu, I've swiped your card for the elevator." "Mr. Lu? Mr. Lu?" Little Chen called out to Lu Benlai several times before the latter finally snapped out of his daze. Ignoring Little Chen's words, he whipped out his phone and gave Lung Wan a call. "Sorry, the number you have dialed is currently unavailable." He dialed the number several times only to receive the same reply. An ominous premonition suddenly struck his heart. Without any hesitation, he dashed out of the neighborhood, hailed a cab and headed to her place. On the way there he called He Tian Tian and Jiang Yu, but the reply he received was that he hadn't seen Leng Wan since the afternoon. They were also looking for her but they weren't able to find her. After hanging up the call, Lu Benlai urged the driver to drive even faster. He had no idea what was wrong with him, but his heart was beating so quickly that it felt like an eternity. It was only a 10-minute walk, but when he arrived at Leng Wan building he felt as if a century had passed. He tossed a bill to the driver and without even giving him the change he rushed into the building. He rushed to the floor where Leng Wan lived. He pressed the doorbell anxiously but the door didn't budge at all. There was no sign of it opening at all. In the end he rang the doorbell too often and woke up the neighbors. The neighbor was Leng Wan's landlord and he recognized Lu Benlai. Upon seeing him he was taken aback for a moment before asking, "Are you here to look for Leng Wan? Don't you know? She told me early this morning that she wouldn't be staying here anymore. She didn't even let me refund her rent and deposit. He just left. Gone? Did he?" Lu Benlai's heart skipped a beat. "Where did he go? Did she tell you?" "That's a funny question. You're her boyfriend. If you don't know where she went, how would I know?" Chapter 980. As he spoke, the landlord casually took out a bunch of keys from the shoe cabinet and dangled them in front of Lu Benlai. Lu Benlai was very familiar with the plush toy hanging on the keys. He had bought it with Leng Wan for 10 renminbi at the roadside of the night market. He knew that the landlord wasn't lying to him. He knew that she really didn't want to live here anymore. He also knew that no matter how much he didn't want to face such a situation, she had still left. After apologizing to the landlord, Lu Benlai turned around and walked down the stairs without saying a word. "Mr. Lu, this is the 30th floor. Why are you taking the stairs instead of the elevator?" "Mr. Lu," the landlord chased after him and warned him several times, but seeing that he didn't respond at all he finally gave up and allowed him to go. After leaving the apartment, Lu Benlai wandered aimlessly along the streets for a while. It was only when the night breeze had calmed him down that he found a random bench by the roadside and sat down. Unwilling to give up, he took out his phone and continued calling her. One after another. No matter how many times he called, the only reply he received was, "I'm sorry, the phone of the number you have dialed is currently unavailable." He had no idea how many times he had called her. It was only when he suddenly stopped in exhaustion that he realized that there were many missed calls from her in his call history. 1 2 3 4 5. 47 48. 73 74. 86 87. 95 96 97 98. The more he counted, the more panicked Lu Benlai became. How he wished that the number would stay at 99. However, after counting for an entire hour, the number of missed calls from her remained at 100. "Lu Benlai, have you heard of such a story? There was a couple who had a falling out. The boy would come to the girl's apartment every night to coax her for 99 consecutive days. The girl thought that as long as the boy came again tomorrow, she would be with him once more. On the 100th night the boy came, but when the girl rushed down the stairs, the boy told her that they should end it. Do you know why? It's because in love, it's impossible for one person to give his all. So the boy is willing to give his all, but he won't fall in love with someone who doesn't love him at all. So the 99th time is to persuade the girl to stay and the 100th time is to give up." She actually called him so many times, but he actually didn't pay attention to it. 99 calls. She was trying to persuade him to stay. She gave him 99 chances. In the end, when she completely gave up, he finally regained his senses. The two of them had always been fine. They had never quarreled. It was just this one time. Just this one conflict. How did it end up like this? All these years he had been fighting for her. He wanted her to live the best life in the most prosperous city. He didn't sleep at 3 in the morning, but he still worked hard. Chapter 982. Lin Jiege, Recalling that he had placed those things on the table, he subconsciously raised his hand to point to the table beside him and say, "Isn't it over there?" But before he could say anything, Shi Yao, who was standing by his side, had already pointed at him and interjected, "Auntie Sun, you're here to take those things away? There's no need to look anymore, Lin Jiege has eaten all of them." Hearing those words, Auntie Sun turned to look at Lin Jiege with a bizarre expression. Noticing Auntie Sun's gaze, Lin Jiege was stunned for a moment before he turned to look at Shi Yao. When he went to the toilet in the middle of the night and saw a table full of food, Shi Yao couldn't help but want to have a taste of it. After tasting it for a while, she eventually finished it all and flashed a sweet smile at Lin Jiege before shifting the blame onto him. He was hungry last night, so he ate all of those things, leaving nothing behind, right? Lin Jiege? The words that Lin Jiege wanted to say were stuck in his throat, but upon hearing Shi Yao's question he nodded stiffly and replied, "That's right." Seemingly dissatisfied with his reaction, Shi Yao pouted her lips. Without any hesitation, Lin Jiege spoke up once more with a resolute expression, "That's right, I ate it in the middle of the night last night." Hearing those words, Auntie Sun took it for granted and replied with an "oh." After which, she told them to hurry downstairs for breakfast before leaving the bedroom. After Auntie Sun closed the door behind her, Lin Jiege immediately turned to look at Shi Yao. Shi Yao's eyes darted around for a moment before she met Lin Jiege's gaze and spoke up with a logical tone, "Why are you looking at me? Look at me, you ate them too. It's the one in my stomach." He kept saying, "Daddy, I'm hungry, Daddy, I'm hungry," so I had no choice but to feed those things to the one in my stomach. Since he's calling me Daddy, I'm feeding him on your behalf. Since I'm feeding him on your behalf, that means that you're the one who ate them. So, is there a problem with that? And no problem at all. What problem could there be? What problem could there possibly be? Hearing those words, Shi Yao immediately burst into laughter. She pulled Lin Jiege's arm and rushed downstairs excitedly for breakfast. The entire family was seated in the dining room, and as soon as they saw Shi Yao and Lin Jiege, they immediately called out, "Yao Yao, sit down." Nevertheless, they still had to abide by the rules, so before eating, they first offered Grandpa Lin a cup of tea. Of course, after the tea was served, the elders had to give red packets. Old Mr. Lin prepared 2 red packets, each one heavy and heavy. "Yao, this is yours." "Thank you, grandfather." Shi Yao accepted the gift with both hands. "Jiege, this is yours," Grandpa Lin said as he passed the red packet into Shi Yao's hands. Lin Jiege. After the tea was served, Lin Jiege and Shi Yao took their seats. Everyone at the table urged Shi Yao to eat more while asking her what she wanted to eat. It was only after Shi Yao picked up her chopsticks that everyone turned to look at Lin Jiege. "Grandpa Lin, Auntie Sun said that you ate all the peanuts and longanians in the middle of the night? Lin Gubei, it's one thing for you to eat but there's nothing left?" Jiang Wangui shot Lin Jiege a glance, allowing him to comprehend the situation. "Lin Jie, it's one thing that you didn't leave a single one, but you even secretly ate them while Yao Yao was asleep? That's too much." Lin Jiege. Chapter 983. On the 1st of January, on the night of New Year's Day, Shi Yao jolted awake from her sleep. Vaguely sensing that she was about to give birth, she subconsciously kicked Lin Jiege beside her. Lin Jiege, who had been sleeping with his clothes on every night ever since he learned that Shi Yao was due to give birth, instinctively leaped out of bed. After confirming that Shi Yao was about to give birth, he bent down to carry her and rushed to the hospital through the night. A month before Shi Yao was due to give birth, Grandpa Lin had already arranged for a doctor to accompany her. So by the time Lin Jiege brought Shi Yao to the hospital, the doctor was already waiting at the entrance. Under the doctor's help, Shi Yao successfully gave birth to a son when the sun rose from the east. Naming was a big deal, so everyone had prepared a name for the new member of the Lin family. However, none of them had expressed their opinions yet. After giving birth, Shi Yao took a look at the baby before turning to Lin Jiege and saying, "Can we call him Lin Shi?" Lin from Lin Jiege and Shi Yao from Shi. These were 2 words that had suddenly flashed across her mind while she was going through the pain of childbirth. She felt that there was no one more suitable to be their child. Shi Yao's nonchalant words sent the names that everyone in the Lin family had prepared into the depths of hell. Before anyone could even voice out their names, they had already expressed their approval. 3 years and 6 months later. Ever since the start of summer, the weather in Beijing was getting hotter and hotter. The young master of the Lin family, Lin Shi, had recently learned a new skill, writing a diary while listening to a voice. May 28, My name is Lin Sure. You can call me Little Bomb because my great-grandfather likes to call me that. You can also call me Baby because Grandma's son likes to call me that. You can also call me Little Bun because Grandpa and Grandma like to call me that. You can also call me Little Sweetheart because Auntie likes to call me that. You can also call me Little Snack because Mom likes to call me that, of course. You can also call me Little Light Bulb because Dad always calls me that. I don't know why, every time Dad calls me that, the whole family glares at me. I think light bulb is pretty good. It was invented by the great scientist Edison. It can give off light and heat. When I grow up, I also want to be a person who gives off light and heat. May 29th. I discovered a pattern today. When great-grandpa brings me around, he always asks if I'm full, as if he's afraid that I'll be hungry. When Grandma, Grandpa, and Aunt bring me around, they always ask if I'm cold, as if they're afraid that I'll freeze. When Aunt brings me around, she always likes to teach me martial arts, telling me that boys have to cleave a wolf to death with their bare hands and kick a tiger to death. When Mom brings me around, she always likes to change my clothes for me and constantly takes pictures of me, saying whose son is the prettiest. But when Dad brings me around, he never cares about me, only occasionally asking if I'm alive. Chapter 984. June 1st. Continuing from yesterday's diary entry, the reason why I like great-grandfather and Uncle Xia the most is because they are the most patient when it comes to accompanying me. Great-grandfather would teach me how to write with a brush, and every time that happens, great-grandfather would become very solemn, but I know that he's doing it for my own good, because Grandma's son told me that great-grandfather taught my father the same thing when he was young. As for Uncle Xia, he's not a part of our family, he's my aunt's assistant. Let me tell you a secret, whenever my aunt takes me out, it's always Uncle Xia who takes me out. Uncle Xia would patiently play games with me, help me learn words, and even teach me to recite Tang poems. Every time I return home, when I tell my family what my aunt taught me today, my family would always praise my aunt. Actually, I wanted to tell them that Uncle Xia was the one who taught me, but Uncle Xia wouldn't allow it. I don't know why. Oh right, today is Children's Day and I met Uncle Xia again. Uncle Xia taught me a new poem, May One's Heart Be One, Never to Be Parted. I asked Uncle Xia what this poem means, and Uncle Xia said that I'm still young and I'll know it in the future. It's a poem about love. I asked Uncle Xia what love is, and Uncle Xia said that Joy is my aunt's name. When did my aunt's name turn into love? Sigh, the world of adults sure is complicated. June 2nd. Oh right, I didn't finish yesterday's diary entry. I still have a few uncles and they're not bad either. Uncle Liang likes to bring me to read mangas, but he gets beaten up by my dad every time. Uncle Desolate Years is really good at gaming, but he doesn't teach me how to play, so I don't ask him if he wants any whenever I have candy. As for Uncle Lu, he's actually very handsome and he always buys me a lot of delicious food. I quite like him, but my mom always criticizes him, so I can only follow my mother's wishes and stop liking him. Oh right, my mom often says to Uncle Lu, you didn't cherish Ling Wan when she was by your side, and now that she's gone, you want us to accompany you all around the world to fish for fish? What does Ling Wan mean? To accompany you all around the world to fish for fish. Does it mean that you've eaten all over the world? I love Haidaleo noodles the most, but they said that children can't eat hot pot, so I've only had one bite. June 3rd. In addition to a few uncles, I also have 2 godmothers. I like my mother as much as I like my godmothers. But my mother told me that I have 3 godmothers. I asked her where the 3rd one is, but my mother didn't say anything. Later, I saw my mother wiping her tears, and from then on, I didn't dare to ask my mother this question again. Oh right, my mother is a middle school teacher and her students also like me a lot, but I don't think those students are as handsome as I am. June 4th. Today, a female student transferred into my class. The teacher told her to sit beside me and she's really cute. Her eyes are as black as grapes, and when I said that I want to eat your eyes, she cried. Her face is as red as an apple, and when I said that I want to bite your face, she cried again. When I saw that she kept crying, I called her a little crybaby and she cried again. Then I was scolded by the teacher. All in all, I remember this little crybaby. Her name is Ling Kiki. Today, when I was showing off my plane to her, I told her that it was a gift from my father, and she actually asked me a really stupid question. What is a father? I said that you don't even know who your father is. You're so stupid. He cried again, so annoying. Chapter 985. June 4th, June 5th, June 6th. In the blink of an eye, It was already June 28th. Lin Shi had been persisting in writing a voice diary for an entire month now. June 28th was Lin Jia's birthday. Lin Shi loved it when someone at home celebrated their birthday. This was because every time someone celebrated their birthday he would be able to eat his favorite cake. Usually no one would give him cake because it was to protect his teeth, even though he felt that his teeth were pretty tough. Thinking about how he would be able to eat cake at night, Lin Shi woke up in joy. After breakfast, before heading to kindergarten, he hid himself in the cupboard in his bedroom and began recording his voice diary on his phone. Yesterday the crybaby cried again. The reason was because she had 5 RMB in her pocket. I took it away and told her that I was saving it up for her when she grows up so that she can give the money to her as her dowry. After class I went to buy snacks, but because I didn't have enough money in my pocket I used up 50 cents of the 5 RMB that the crybaby kept. After that, the crybaby started wiping her tears, saying that I was lying to her. I told her that I wasn't lying to her, that I was seriously helping her with her dowry. When she grows up and marries me, the money for her dowry will still be mine. I'm just spending a little bit of it in advance. I don't think I'm wrong, but after hearing those words, the crybaby cried even more fiercely, saying that she doesn't want to marry me. Depressing. What's wrong with me? I think I'm pretty good. I have a beautiful mother, an amiable great-grandfather and grandparents and aunties who dote on me. It's just that my father isn't too reliable. I think it's my father who has dragged me down. It's so tiring to be a child. Right, it's my aunt's birthday today, so I wish my aunt a happy birthday. Lastly, I hope that my aunt will get married soon. This is Grandma's wish. Grandma has already grown 3 strands of white hair over this matter. Now that I think about it, it's really tiring for the elderly and children. After saying all that he wanted to say, Lin Shi replayed the voice recording once more. After confirming that there were no problems, he put his phone away. Before climbing out of the cupboard, he thought for a moment before picking up his phone and changing his password. Then with a heavy heart he carried his backpack and headed to kindergarten. In the afternoon when he was playing games, Lung Keek's double? Diao Shu. However, this time it wasn't Lin Shi who was crying. It was Lung Kiki who was playing with her toys when she was harassed by a boy. Then the two of them started fighting. When the boy grabbed a plastic toy block to throw at Lung Kiki, he was blocked by Lin Shi, who saw this scene from the side. Then the plastic block landed on Lin Shi's ear, causing him to bleed a little. After seeing the blood, Lung Kiki burst into tears. At first Lin Shi thought that the pain was nothing. He looked at Lung Kiki proudly and said, "I'm fine." Lung Kiki pointed at his ear and stammered for a long time. Then with a sobbing tone she said, "Blood, blood." Lin Shi stretched out his hand and touched his ear. He saw a little red dot on his fingertip. Then he, who had fainted since he was young, blacked out and fell to the ground. Chapter 986. Zhang Xiaoyu was the boy who had a disagreement with Lung Kiki. After hearing this, Zhang Xiaoyu was so scared that he started crying. Then the originally peaceful kindergarten children all started crying at the same time when they saw the fainted Lin Shi. When Lin Shi woke up, he was in the kindergarten school hospital. Beside him stood the crying little crybaby and a very beautiful, big sister. Lin Shi blinked his eyes and asked, "Big sister, are you the new school doctor?" When the big sister heard Lin Shi's words, she giggled. "No, I'm Keek's mother. You should call me Auntie." Coco's mother. When Papa saw Mama's mother, he was especially respectful, so, "Hello, Auntie, my name is Lin Shi. You can call me Xiao Shi or Snack. That's what my mother calls me. You can also call me Little Light Bulb. That's what my father calls me. My mother is a teacher and my father runs his own company. I also have my great-grandfather, great-grandfather, great-grandmother, great-aunt, great-grandmother. They all work in the company founded by my grandfather." Hearing Lin Shi's introduction, the big sister looked at him with a complicated expression, as if surprised and pleasantly surprised. After a while she asked, "What's your mother's name?" Lin Shi's family had told him not to reveal his family's affairs to strangers, but after some thought he realized that Keek's mother couldn't be considered as a stranger. Rather, she could be considered as one of his family. Thus he replied honestly, "My mom's name is Shi Yao." The big sister looked at Lin Shi with a much warmer gaze. She even reached out and patted Lin Shi's head. Then she handed all the snacks she had prepared for Lung Kiki to Lin Shi. "Auntie, thank you for saving Kiki." Lin Shi's eyes almost popped out of their sockets when he saw so many snacks. However, he was still very reserved and only took a piece of chocolate. "Auntie, you're welcome. Mom told me that I must help my classmates. Also, I don't need so many of these snacks. I only need one." "It doesn't matter. These are all for you. You can keep them and eat them slowly." Hearing Mother Keek's words, Lin sure nodded like an adult. "All right then, I'll do as you say." Big Sister was amused by the string of words that came out of his mouth. Lin sure also laughed. Then, as if he had thought of something, he tilted his head and asked, "Auntie, will I be disfigured? My dad said that he caught up with my mom because of his good looks." Big Sister smiled again. She reached out and patted Lin Shure's head again. "Oh, you'll be fine. If you're really disfigured, I'll marry Kiki to you." Lin Shure immediately beamed with joy. "Okay." Lung Kiki, who was standing at the side, seemed to be stunned when she heard this. She widened her eyes and looked at her mother, then at her temporary assistant. Then she started crying again. She cried the most heartbroken she had ever cried. Chapter 987. Uncle Lu. Lin Shure greeted Lu Benlai calmly before turning his attention back to the snacks Keek's mother had prepared for him, ignoring the latter's inspection of him. After he was done devouring the pile of snacks, he raised his head to look at Lu Benlai, who was drenched in sweat from rushing over from the entrance, and his breathing was still a little unstable. Thus he asked, "Uncle Lu, why are you here? Where are my parents?" "Your father received a call from his teacher and he heard that you had fainted. Then he received a call from your mother and she said that her car was restricted, so she asked your father to pick her up to attend your aunt's birthday banquet. So your father asked me to come to your school to check on your condition and bring you to your aunt's birthday banquet, and your father went to pick your mother up." Hearing Lu Benlai's explanation, Lin Shure replied with an "Oh." As expected, parents are true love, and the baby was just an accident. Lu Benlai burst into laughter. "Where did you learn all of these theories from?" Lin Shure looked at Lu Benlai as if he was looking at an idiot. "Uncle Lu, this is a popular saying on the internet. Don't you know? Are you living in the previous century? Let me tell you, the great Qing has already fallen." Lu Benlai. While packing his bag, Lin Shure added, "If great-grandpa, grandpa and grandma find out that daddy treated me like this today, I'm sure that he'll be flamed one after another. Forget it, I'll let him off this time. But Uncle Lu, it's really worrisome to have such a father." On the other hand, Lu Benlai was rendered speechless for a moment. Then he picked up Lin Shure and left the school grounds. On the way to Lin Jiai's birthday banquet, Lin Shure told Lu Benlai about Keek's mother. "Uncle Lu, I met a really beautiful auntie today. I really like her, but I like her daughter even more. Her daughter is called Little Crybaby." Upon hearing the words Little Crybaby, Lu Benlai turned to look at Lin Shure and asked, "What is it?" "Oh, Uncle Lu, Little Crybaby is the name I gave to Kiki. Her real name is Lung Kiki and she's 3 years old this year." Lu Benlai suddenly stepped on the brakes. Lin Shure leaned forward to look at Lu Benlai and asked, "Uncle Lu, what's wrong?" Lu Benlai remained silent. Little Lin Shure continued, "Uncle Lu? Uncle Lu?" Recovering from his daze, Lu Benlai replied with an oak before stepping on the accelerator once more. Although he seemed to be staring intently at the road ahead, his mind was in a mess. It was truly rare to see someone with the surname Lung. In all these years, Lung Wan was the only one with the surname Lung. And now it turned out that one of Lin Shure's classmates was Lung Kiki. Back then he had chatted with Lung Wan about it. He liked the name Kiki, but it was a pity that he was a man so he couldn't use it. If they had a daughter in the future, he would name her Kiki. However, he thought that perhaps he was too sensitive or perhaps he missed her too much. As such, when he heard the name Lung Kiki, the first thought that popped into his mind was, could Lung Kiki be Lung Wan's child? Chapter 988. Come to think of it, it should have been 4 years since she left him, right? 4 years. Over 1,000 days and nights, he had been thinking of her and looking for her, but it was as if she had vanished into thin air. He couldn't find her no matter how hard he tried. China World Hotel, Beijing. Xia Shangzhou had been busy preparing for Lin Jiai's birthday banquet since noon. "Take this purple thing away. She hates this color the most. Remove this lilies as well. Remember, don't put lilies in places where she will appear. She doesn't like the smell of lilies. She finds it pungent. Try to maintain the original taste of this dish. Don't add too many condiments. She likes the original taste of this dish. When the dishes are served, this dish must be placed closest to her. She likes to eat it. And this winter shade skill soup, it must be placed next to her. She doesn't like to eat it, but this soup is good for her body. If it is placed next to her, she will drink a little. Help me hold this blanket first. There's a lot of air conditioning here at night, so it will definitely get cold. She needs it. Help me keep this pair of flats. Remember to pass it to me right after the banquet is over. Also, I want piano music. She likes piano music. Did you put almonds in the cake? She likes to eat. Remember to cut down on soy sauce in all the dishes. She's been whitening recently, and due to her recent trip to the beach, she got tanned. She said that she wants to nurse it back to its original state, so she doesn't want to touch soy sauce anymore. Xia Shangzhou was just about to continue when he paused for a moment. I've forgotten about it. Let me think of something first. The manager of the World Hotel Beijing, who was next to Xia Shangzhou, wrote down the details one by one. He couldn't help but half-jokingly say, Mr. Xia, you've always been so concerned about Miss Lin. Those who don't know would think you like Miss Lin. Hearing those words, Xia Shangzhou burst into laughter as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. You should know that she's the boss, so of course I have to lick her boots. The manager replied with a few yes before retreating back to his work. After confirming that there was no one around him, the smile on Xia Shangzhou's face vanished, and a hint of sorrow surfaced in his eyes. Was it really that obvious? It seemed that in the past year he had heard more and more similar words. However, he had never dared to expect anything from her. He treated her well because he liked her. With such thoughts in mind, Xia Shangzhou walked out of the Beijing World Hotel and headed to a nearby supermarket. There he picked out a pack of sanitary pads, which was Lin Jiayi's favorite. Just now he wanted to ask the hotel manager to prepare it for him, but when the words were on the tip of his tongue, he realized that it was a private matter and not appropriate. These 2 days were her period. She would never prepare these things in advance. Lin Jiayi's birthday banquet was set for 7 p.m. But it was already 7:30 and Lin Jiayi still hadn't appeared. The entire family tried calling Lin Jiayi one after another, but no one picked up. It was already 8 o'clock, but Lin Jiayi was still nowhere to be seen. Since Lin Shi was here, it was impossible for them to go hungry. Old Mr. Lin instructed everyone to start eating. But Xia Shangzhou wasn't in the mood to pick up his chopsticks. He discreetly called Lin Jiayi several times, but he was still unable to reach her. Thus, while no one was paying attention to him, he left the Beijing World Hotel and drove to look for her. Chapter 989. Xia Shangzhou searched through all of the places that Lin Jiayi liked to visit, the places that she frequented and the places that she might visit, but he was still unable to find Lin Jiayi. Along the way, other than calling Lin Jiayi a few times, Xia Shangzhou also called Lin Jiayi. He learned that Lin Jiayi and the others hadn't been able to contact Lin Jiayi while he was away, and Lin Jiayi hadn't appeared at his birthday banquet either. As it was already very late, Lin Jiayi told Xia Shangzhou that they were preparing to leave. Before hanging up the call, Lin Jiayi could tell that Xia Shangzhou was overly anxious, so he consoled him by saying that Lin Jiayi would be fine. Even if someone were to harbor evil intentions, the one who would be in trouble would be the one who would be in trouble. Lin Jiayi even added that the fact that Lin Jiayi's call was able to get through to him could only mean one thing. Lin Jiayi didn't want to answer his call. Something had really happened. She would have been the first person to get through to him. Xia Shangzhou knew that Lin Jiayi was right, and he knew that the security in the capital had always been good. Even in the dead of the night, it was unlikely that anything would happen. However, he still felt an inexplicable unease in his heart, as if something huge had happened tonight. After hanging up the call with Lin Jiayi, Xia Shangzhou sat in his car for a while. Thinking that he wouldn't be able to fall asleep even if he were to return home, he decided to give it a try and drive along the dark streets of Beijing to see if he could find Lin Jiayi or not. Perhaps the heavens had seen his sincerity, or perhaps he was just lucky, but when it was nearing 11:30, just as Xia Shangzhou was thinking about giving up on returning home if he still couldn't find Lin Jiayi, he suddenly saw Lin Jiayi at the entrance of a clubhouse. She was wearing a black dress and a pair of high heels. Standing by the roadside, she would glance at the entrance of the clubhouse from time to time, as if waiting for someone to come out. It was summer, so it wasn't cold at night. However, it seemed like she had been standing there for too long in her high heels that her feet were starting to feel uncomfortable. She was constantly changing her posture, and from time to time she would even bend over to massage her calves. Upon seeing this sight, Xia Shangzhou immediately stepped on the brakes without any hesitation. He unbuckled his seatbelt and quickly jumped out of the car. Without even calling her name, he ran to the back of the car, opened the trunk and took out a pair of comfortable slippers. He pressed the lock on the trunk and grabbed his slippers. Just as he was about to make his way over to Lin Jui, he saw Lin Jui, who was pacing back and forth at the entrance of the clubhouse, suddenly looking as if she had seen a great ray of hope, and her eyes lit up. She seemed to be very nervous about something, and after a moment of hesitation she finally raised her feet and began making her way over to the entrance of the clubhouse. It was rare for Lin Jui to hesitate in such a manner. She was usually a person who worked swiftly and energetically, and it was rare for her to hesitate like this. Seeing her like this, Xia Shangzhou frowned slightly. He instinctively stopped in his tracks and looked in the direction she was running to. A few men in suits walked out of the clubhouse. One of the men was someone whom Xia Shangzhou had never seen before, but he was extremely familiar with. He had once seen his photo in Lin Jui's office, and even though many years had passed and his appearance had changed a little, he was still able to recognize him. That man was his nightmare, her sweet dream. That man was her first love, the man whom she had muttered innumerable times in her drunken stupor. Chapter 990. Isn't he dead? Why would he appear here alive and well? Lin Jui told him that Qin Ting had died in a travel accident, and his corpse was nowhere to be found. Could it be that Qin Ting wasn't dead at all back then? Could it be that the two of them had lost contact? It was no wonder Lin Jui wouldn't pick up her phone, even ignoring her birthday. It turned out that he had appeared. While Xia Shangzhou was still in shock, Lin Jui had already walked up to Qin Ting and stopped him. Qin Ting? He wasn't too far away from her, so he could hear her voice clearly and feel the trembling in it. I'm trying my best to maintain my composure, but I still can't hide the agitation in my heart, can I? Qin Ting halted his footsteps and stared at Lin Jui in bewilderment. Before Qin Ting could say a word, one of the people around him, President Chen, who had worked with the Lin family enterprise in the past, recognized Lin Jui, and upon seeing her he immediately spoke up. Ms. Lin, what a coincidence. You're here too? President Chen turned to Qin Ting and asked, Mr. Qin, so you're acquainted with Ms. Lin? Ms. Lin? Qin Ting finally spoke up. That's right, she's the daughter of the Lin Corporation, Lin Jui. The most famous project of my company is a collaboration between Boss Lin and me. Mr. Qin, why didn't you tell me earlier that you know Boss Lin? If you had told me earlier, I would have already considered working with you for the sake of Boss Lin. As for the project you mentioned tonight, I'll get my people to evaluate it when I get back. President Chen was delighted to see that everyone here was acquainted with him, and he chattered on for a long time. Then, as if recalling something, he glanced at Lin Jui before turning to Qin Ting and remarked in bewilderment. But now that you mention it, I'm really perplexed. Mr. Qin, given that you're so close with Ms. Lin, why didn't you consider her first? Qin Ting didn't respond to President Chen's words. Instead he turned to Lin Jui. His dark eyes assessed Lin Jui for a moment before asking, Ms. Lin, may I know if we know each other? President Chen was dumbfounded upon hearing Qin Ting's words. You don't know each other? I don't know you. How does Boss Lin know your name? Hearing those words, Lin Jui pursed her lips. Ignoring President Chen, she stared fixedly at Qin Ting and continued, You went to university in America? You are the only child of Shandong province. You grew up in Shanghai. Your birthday is August 24th. You are 31 years old this year. Your English name is Aaron. When you were 19 years old, you had an accident while traveling in September. When you woke up, you were in the hospital, right? Following Lin Jui's words, the astonishment on Qin Ting's face grew deeper and deeper. Ms. Lin, how do you know so much about it? Did you and I really know each other? And very close? Lin Jui didn't respond to Qin Ting's words. Instead, she continued asking, It's fine if you don't remember Lin Jui, but do you still remember Estelle? Qin Ting seemed to be trying hard to remember. After a while, he shook his head and said, I'm sorry, I really don't remember. Chapter 991. You also bought a pair of rings with Estelle. It's silver and it's not worth much. You bought it by the roadside and it's this pair. As Lin Jai spoke, she took out a very old ring from her bag and said, "The female one is with me and the male one is with you. Do you remember?" Enchanting took the ring from Lin Jai and examined it carefully. Then, as if racking his brains, he finally shook his head and said 3 words to Lin Jai. "I'm sorry." Hearing those 3 simple words, Lin Jai's eyes nearly reddened in an instant. However, as there were others around, Lin Jai held back her tears. She calmed herself down for a moment before asking, "Do you really not remember anything?" Enchanting shook his head once more and he apologized once more. "I'm sorry." But this time he didn't give Lin Jai a chance to speak. He immediately said, "Miss Lin, I'm really not too sure what you're talking about, but I'm glad to have met you. I still have other matters to attend to later, so if there's nothing else I'll be taking my leave first." After saying those words, Enchanting returned the ring in her hand to Lin Jai and shot her a polite smile before walking around her and leaving the area. The others also greeted Lin Jai, but as Lin Jai ignored them, they found an excuse to disperse after standing by the side of the road for a while. Soon Lin Jai was the only one left by the roadside. She stood blankly on the spot, staring at the ring with her head lowered. Enchanting's car was parked by the roadside, and the man closest to him opened the car door for him. After he got into the car, he walked around the car and got into the driver's seat. Before the car drove off, Enchanting turned around and looked at Lin Jai through the car window. But soon his phone rang in his pocket. Retracting his gaze, he took out his phone and took a look at the caller ID before answering the call. "Honey, why aren't you asleep yet?" "Me. I just finished a business meeting and I'm about to return to the hotel. I'll be back the day after tomorrow. My flight is in the afternoon and I'll accompany you for dinner tonight." Sleep early, good night." After hanging up the phone, his secretary who was driving asked, "Chairman Qin, was that madam?" "Yes," Enchanting replied as he put away his phone. The secretary drove the car for a while and then asked, "Xiao Qin, do you really not know that Miss Lin?" Enchanting didn't reply. Through the car window he stared at the night view that was constantly passing by, and after a long while he replied, "I don't remember." "That's a pity, the young mistress of the Lin Enterprise. If you still remember, our company will definitely be able to survive this crisis." Qin didn't say anything else and the car fell into silence. Enchanting stared out the window, her fingertips sliding across the phone screen from time to time. She didn't know when it started, but Navigator was becoming more and more like a man. He was no longer the little boy she had picked up from university. He would always ask for her opinion when something happened, and he would run away when she was angry. She didn't know when it started, but there were a few times when she would always see him behind her whenever she turned around. While Lin Jai was still in a daze, Xia Shangzhou walked up to her and placed the slippers in front of her. "Take off your slippers." Lin Jai had been standing there for too long, so she nearly fell as soon as she raised her feet. Xia Shangzhou immediately supported her, and after she managed to steady herself, he walked up to her back and squatted down. "Sit on my back and take off your slippers. It'll be safer this way and you won't fall." Chapter 993. Lin Jai turned her head to look at Xia Shangzhou. She hadn't paid much attention to it in the past, but for some reason memories of the past kept flashing through her mind. She suddenly realized that there were many times when she was changing her shoes that Xia Shangzhou would squat behind her and act as a chair for her to sit on. She couldn't remember exactly when this started, but it felt like it had been a very, very long time ago. Seeing that there wasn't any weight pressing down on his back, Xia Shangzhou couldn't help but turn his head around out of curiosity. Before his gaze could reach Lin Jai's upper body, Lin Jai had already recovered from her daze. She quickly retracted her gaze and sat on his back before bending down to change her shoes. After she changed into her shoes and stood up, she said to Xia Shangzhou, "Thank you." It was a simple word, but it caused Xia Shangzhou, who was just about to stand up, to freeze on the spot. Roughly half a minute later, as if nothing had happened to him, he straightened his back. However, his fingers, which were twisting the cap of the mineral water bottle, were still trembling slightly. "Thank you." I know very well where I stand in her heart. I know that I'm just an employee, a subordinate, an existence who should serve her. But today she actually thanked me. It was just 2 simple words, but it left me feeling satisfied for a very long time. After calming himself down, Xia Shangzhou walked up to Lin Jui and passed the bottle of mineral water to her. Ms. Lin, have some water. After Lin Jui took the bottle from him, Xia Shangzhou bent down to pick up the high heels that Lin Jui had changed out of. Ms. Lin, I'll send you home. After drinking half a bottle of water, Lin Jui twisted the cap back on before turning to look at Xia Shangzhou. Xia Shangzhou didn't know what he was panicking about, but he instinctively averted his eyes to avoid her gaze. She replied with a very soft before walking over to his car, which was parked by the roadside. Xia Shangzhou heaved a sigh of relief. He hastened his footsteps and opened the car door for her. After getting into the car, Xia Shangzhou fastened his seatbelt and asked, Ms. Lin, are you returning to the old manor or your own place? Let's return to my own place. All right. After a pause, Xia Shangzhou continued, it's your birthday today. You didn't go to your birthday party and your family has been waiting for you for a long time. They've also called you many times. If you're not going back to the mansion, give them a call so that they won't worry about you. After a moment of contemplation, Xia Shangzhou felt that Lin Jui must be feeling awful after bumping into Enchanting today. If she were to call back to the old manor, she would surely be lectured by the elders of the clan. Thus he added, why don't I give the old manor a call right now? All right. After hearing Lin Jiai's reply, Xia Shangzhou picked up his phone and gave the old manor a call. Oh, old Master Lin. I'm Xiao Xia. Yes, I found President Lin. She's not feeling well. It's fine. You don't have to come and see her. I'll send her back to rest. Listening to the conversation between Xia Shangzhou and her grandfather, Lin Jiai's thoughts drifted away once more. He's with President Chen tonight, so President Chen must have his contact details. Maybe he knows which hotel he's staying at. Can you help me ask President Chen? Also, can you help me make an appointment with Enchanting tomorrow? I want to see him again. After hearing Lin Jiai's words, Xia Shangzhou silently tightened his grip around the steering wheel, but there wasn't much of a change in his expression. He waited for her to finish her words and 3 seconds later he finally replied with a calm and unhurried tone, all right. Chapter 995. Lin Jiai and Xia Shangzhou fell silent once more. Soon the car stopped below Lin Jiai's apartment. Xia Shangzhou got out of the car and opened the door for Lin Jiai. Just as Lin Jiai was about to enter the apartment, she suddenly recalled something and turned around to look at Xia Shangzhou. Don't forget about my matter. Xia Shangzhou knew that Lin Jiai was referring to the matter of contacting Enchanting. He tried his best to maintain his composure as he nodded at Lin Jiai. I remember. Lin Jiai waved her hand and walked into the elevator without saying a word. By the time the elevator doors closed, Xia Shangzhou's eyes were filled with deep sorrow. He stood at the bottom of the building for a very long time until he saw that the lights in Lin Jiai's apartment were already turned on. He knew that she had entered her apartment, so he returned to his car and drove away from her neighborhood. He drove along the quiet street in the middle of the night. After driving for some distance, he suddenly braked and stopped the car by the side of the road. He picked up his phone and searched for Chief Chen's number. He stared at the screen for a long while before he eventually dialed the number. Very soon, the call was picked up and Chief Chen's familiar voice sounded from the other end. Assistant Xia, why did you suddenly call me? Xia Shangzhou exchanged a few pleasantries with Chief Chen before getting to the point. It's like this. I called you to ask for a person's contact information. His name is Enchanting, but I'm not too sure about his situation. Alright, thank you. I received your message. Also, can I ask you one last thing? Do you know where Mr. Chen lives? The apartment next to Second Ring Road, right? Alright. Thank you so much. I'll treat you to a meal when I'm free. Goodbye. After hanging up the call, Xia Shangzhou tapped open the message Chief Chen had sent him. He stared at the 11 digits for a moment before sending a message over. Hello, Mr. Chen. I'm Xia Shangzhou, Lin Jiai's assistant. Chief Lin would like to meet you tomorrow night. May I know if you're free? Roughly a minute after the message was sent, Xia Shangzhou received a reply from Qin Ting. Yes. Following which Qin Ting sent another message. May I know where to meet? Instead of replying to Qin Ting's words, Xia Shangzhou sent a screenshot of their conversation over to Lin Jiao's WeChat. 5 minutes later, Xia Shangzhou's phone lit up. It was a call from Lin Jiao. Navigator, he agreed to it? That's great. Let's meet at the Peking Hotel tomorrow. When I was in America with him, I said I would take him there for a meal when I had time, but I never had the chance. Cancel all my itineraries for tomorrow night. No, cancel all my itineraries after 3 p.m. Also, tell the manager of the Peking Hotel to prepare the freshest seafood in advance. Qin Ting likes it a lot. Also, let's meet at 6:30 p.m. tomorrow night. Remember to ask them to open that bottle of good wine that I saved. Lin Jiao had been talking to Xia Shangzhou for a very long time now, and when she noticed that Xia Shangzhou had gone silent, she asked, Navigator, are you listening? When I was here, I was listening. Do you remember everything I said? Got it. Is there anything else? Chapter 996. All right. After replying, Xia Shangzhou wanted to say good night, but then he felt that those 2 words were too intimate and too much. In the end, he swallowed them back down and said, Goodbye, Chief Lin. Goodbye, Lin Jiao said before hanging up the phone. Xia Shangzhou listened to the beeping sounds on the other end of the phone for a long while before he finally lowered the phone from his ear. He first searched for the location of the Beijing World Hotel and sent it to Qin Ting before sending a message. Tomorrow night at 6:30 p.m., is this place fine? After receiving Qin Ting's sure, Xia Shangzhou gave a call to the manager of the Beijing World Hotel and relayed all of Lin Jiao's requests to him before tossing his phone onto the passenger seat. It was already late and he had already accomplished everything she had asked of him, but he didn't seem to have any intention of driving home. He leaned against the back of the car for a very long time before he rolled down the window and lit up a cigarette. As soon as he took a puff, he choked on the smoke and began coughing violently. In truth, he used to smoke in university, but she was the one who told him that she couldn't stand the smell of smoke, so she quit. Occasionally he would feel like taking a puff or two when he felt vexed, but it seemed like the cigarettes nowadays weren't the same as the ones he used in university anymore. A single puff could cure all worries. When his coughing finally stopped, Xia Shangzhou didn't take a second puff. Instead, he extinguished the cigarette and tossed it into the bin. In truth, there was no need for him to feel so terrible, was there? He had known for a long time that she would never belong to him. For a girl like her, only a dragon among men would be worthy of her. As for him, he had bitterly endured for 5 years after graduation. He had only managed to pay for a down payment in Beijing and buy a small apartment that wasn't even as big as her bedroom. Everyone knew that a princess might not necessarily end up with a prince, but with a knight. Putting aside a prince, he couldn't even be considered as a knight. At the very most, he could only be a guard of the princess. This was a gap that he would never be able to bridge in his entire life. Now Qin Ting was back. The Qin Ting that she had missed for so long was back. It was good. Anyway, she couldn't be single for the rest of her life. Instead of marrying for the sake of marriage, she might as well be with the person she truly loved. That way she would live a happy life. Wasn't that the ending he had hoped for? While Xia Shangzhou was in a daze, the phone he threw on the passenger seat suddenly rang. He glanced at the caller ID and answered, President Zhang, you've returned to Beijing on a business trip? This weekend? Sure. But I can't guarantee anything. You know my situation. I might have to work overtime on the weekends. Isn't the matter of poaching me over? Why are you always teasing me? Okay, I'll contact you this weekend. 4 years ago, Mr. Zhang was the one who had tried to poach him. In the end, he did not manage to poach him. Instead, the two of them became good friends. Occasionally, on the weekends, Mr. Zhang would invite him for afternoon tea or something. He called him just now because he wanted to have coffee with him on the weekends. He said that when he worked overtime on the weekends, Mr. Zhang laughed at him and said that it would have been great if he had jumped to his company earlier. He could be an executor and fish in troubled waters at any time. Yet Mr. Zhang laughed at him and said that he really loved Lin Corporation. Everyone thought that he loved Lin Corporation, but they didn't know that he only loved one person in Lin Corporation. It was a pity that she already had someone else in her heart. Chapter 997. The next afternoon before 3 o'clock, Lin Jie stopped her work and had Xia Shangzhou send her to a nearby shopping mall. She had a VIP card at the beauty salon in the shopping mall, so she would come here for a spa session whenever she was free. Most of the time it was Xia Shangzhou who booked the rooms for her. Today was no exception. While Xia Shangzhou was booking a room for her, Lin Jie was strolling around the shopping mall downstairs. After receiving Xia Shangzhou's call, Lin Jie grabbed the spoils of war she had just bought and headed upstairs. After Lin Jie entered the beauty salon, Xia Shangzhou didn't wander too far away. Instead he found an empty seat in the cafe on the 5th floor of the shopping mall and ordered a cup of black coffee. After which he took out his laptop and began helping Lin Jie with her unfinished work in the company. Xia Shangzhou set an alarm and an hour and 50 minutes later his alarm rang. He quickly saved the things he had just finished on his laptop before packing up his things. After calling for the waiter to pay the bill, he stood up and headed to the beauty salon downstairs. He waited at the entrance for roughly 10 minutes before Lin Jie walked out under the escort of the president of the beauty salon and her caregiver. For an instant, Xia Shangzhou couldn't recognize the woman standing before him. Her usual waist-length curly hair was straightened and hung softly at the back of her head. As she had to meet many clients every day, her face, which always had makeup on, was now devoid of any adornment. Her clean and fair skin was so tender that she didn't look like a 30-year-old person at all. Instead she was wearing a white lace shirt, a simple black skirt and a pair of white flats. She looked youthful and beautiful. At first glance she looked like an inexperienced university student who had just walked out of school. In Xia Shangzhou's mind, Lin Jie was a flamboyant, wanton, seductive and radiant woman. He had never seen her in such a simple and elegant manner before, as clean as a piece of white paper that hadn't been dyed in the world. Xia Shangzhou was so stunned that he didn't even notice Lin Jie walking up to him. "How is it? Do I look good?" Lin Jie asked as she spun around Xia Shangzhou gracefully. Recovering from his daze, Xia Shangzhou's gaze lingered on her face for a few seconds longer before he nodded and replied, "You look good. Do you look good this way or usual?" "Both. I knew you'd say the same thing if I asked you." "Forget it, I won't make things difficult for you. However, I'm sure Enchanting will like my outfit. When he confessed to me, he told me that the first time he saw me was because I was wearing a white shirt and a black skirt. That was how he noticed me." Xia Shangzhou didn't say a word. With a smile on his face, he took the clothes from Lin Jie's hands and changed the topic. "Boss Lin, it's about time for us to set off. If we delay any longer, the traffic will surely get worse and you might end up being late." Lin Jie nodded her head in agreement. Chapter 998. After which Lin Jie asked, "Navigator, how tall are you?" 185. "Oh, that's really quite tall. You're taller than Enchanting by 5 centimeters. I'm wearing high heels, so I'm around the same height as Enchanting. When I was in high school I was already 1.7 meters tall. Back then I wanted to find a man who was at least 1.85 meters tall, and your height was one of my goals back then. Navigator, to tell you the truth, I used to despise Enchanting for being too short." When they arrived at the elevator, Xia Shangzhou made use of this opportunity to not respond to Lin Jie's words. As he pressed the elevator button, he thought to himself, "Even if he doesn't meet your initial requirements, he's the one you like. Even if I meet your initial requirements, I'm the one you don't want. So no matter how bad he is, I'm still envious of him." After sending Lin Jie to the entrance of China World Hotel, Xia Shangzhou got out of the car, and when he opened the car door for her he said, "I'll wait for you in the car. Let me know when you're done, I'll pick you up at the entrance." After getting out of the car, Lin Jie replied to Xia Shangzhou with the "all right." Just as she was about to enter China World Hotel, a thought suddenly occurred to her, and she turned around to look at Xia Shangzhou. "You should go eat first. I won't be done anytime soon anyway, so don't just wait in the car." Xia Shangzhou nodded and agreed to it. It was only after Lin Jie's silhouette disappeared from the entrance of China World Hotel that he opened the car door and got into the car. He parked the car at the entrance of a tea house by the side and ordered some food before switching on his laptop. As he ate, he typed on the keyboard, finishing up the unfinished work that he'd helped her with earlier in the afternoon. Every time he finished any work he would take a look at the time. 30 minutes had passed since she entered China World Hotel, peaking. 1 hour, 1.5 hours, 2 hours. For some reason it felt like an eternity had passed. It wasn't that he didn't have any work to do, but he just couldn't help but feel as if every minute felt like a year. 2.5 hours after Lin Jie entered China World Hotel, Xia Shangzhou finally finished the rest of her work for the day. It was already 9 o'clock and his phone was quiet. She hadn't called him to pick her up at the door. With nothing to do, time became even more difficult to pass. Xia Shangzhou stared out the window in a daze, then he stared at the computer screen in a daze. No matter what he was thinking about in the beginning, he ended up thinking about how she was with Enchanting and whether they were having a good time. When it was almost 10, Xia Shangzhou finally received a message from Lin Jie. Like a prisoner released from prison, he let out a sigh of relief. Then he quickly packed his things and drove to the entrance of China World Hotel Beijing. A second after he parked the car, he saw Lin Jie and Enchanting walking out of the elevator through the glass window of the revolving door. She didn't know what the two of them were talking about, but she smiled happily. Xia Shangzhou instinctively averted his gaze away. It was only after they had walked out of the revolving door that he got out of the car and walked to the back seat to open the door for Lin Jie. Lin Jie waved goodbye to Enchanting before climbing into the car with a bright smile on her face. After Xia Shangzhou closed the door, he nodded politely at Enchanting and got into the car. Chapter 999. Reflexively, Xia Shangzhou took out a tissue and passed it to the back seat. After Lin Jie took the tissue, he adjusted the temperature in the car a little higher. After which, he took a blanket from the front passenger seat and passed it to her. Lin Jie took the blanket and wrapped it around herself before saying, "The air conditioning in the Beijing World Hotel is really too cold. It's freezing me to death. My entire legs are cold." While driving, Xia Shangzhou replied, "You'll feel much better after taking a bath. I'll buy you a cup of hot tea when we pass by a cold drinks shop later on." And Lin Jie was clearly in a good mood and she spoke a lot more than usual. "Navigator, I've realized that you're becoming more and more like a homebody. In the past I always thought that you were just a little brat, but it seems like you're becoming more and more like a man now. You're so considerate and considerate. Whoever marries you will surely be blessed. Alright, Navigator, you're not young anymore, are you? Haven't you met a girl you like yet? Didn't you say that you were still chatting with the junior whom I introduced to you 2 years ago? What happened after that? Is there no after that? What about that Miss Zhang who came after? She's pretty and capable. Why, you don't like her either. Wait for me then. I'll look for another one for you in the near future." Xia Shangzhou didn't turn down Lin Jie's willingness to matchmake him. Instead, he replied with an "Navigator, Enchanting has really lost his memory. He doesn't remember me anymore, but he doesn't seem any different from before. When he saw me today, he said the exact same thing he said to me back then. Do you think that counts? No matter how many years have passed, the feeling I give him is still the same." "Navigator, Enchanting is leaving tomorrow. He's working for a small company and I've never heard of it before. However, he'll be coming to Beijing next week." The car was silent, and Xia Shangzhou quietly listened to Lin Jie's recount of what happened between her and Enchanting that night. Even though he didn't really want to hear it, he didn't interrupt her. On the afternoon of the same day, Lu Benlai went to meet the president of a bank. By the time they ended their conversation, it was already 6 in the evening. Lu Benlai noticed that the weather was exceptionally good today, so when the driver drove him past G University, he suddenly had a sudden urge to ask the driver to let him down. After which he asked for the car keys and got the driver to knock off early. Even though he had stayed in Beijing after graduation, he had been too busy. He hadn't returned to G University for quite some time. Now that he was back, the layout was no different from when he was still in school. However, some of the school buildings had been renovated and were much newer. Lu Benlai was a little and he didn't care about his expensive suit. Instead, he sat down casually before he too and he had to made and stared at and said, "I Sean," and said, and he and Lu. Anzhong Ji University was huge, and Lu Benlai was feeling a little tired after walking around the campus. Thus he found a spot on the field and casually sat down, ignoring the expensive suit he was wearing. After which he began staring at the students playing basketball not too far away. Liang. Lu. Lin Lu. He while later he. Chapter 1000. Who's playing a prank on me? Lu Benlai frowned. He stood up in displeasure and turned around to take a look. There he saw an adorable little girl dressed in a pink dress. She was hugging a teddy bear and she was looking at him with her head tilted upward. The fire in his belly was instantly extinguished by the little girl's gaze. He stared at her for a moment before realizing that there weren't any adults around. He quickly looked around, but other than students there wasn't anyone else around. It can't be that some family's little girl got lost, can it? Lu Benlai pondered for a moment before squatting down. With the calmest voice he could muster, he asked, "Little girl, where are your parents?" The little girl seemed a little timid. She stared at him for a moment and after confirming that he wasn't in danger she finally asked, "Daddy? What is that?" Perhaps the little girl really didn't know what a daddy was, but she looked at him innocently, waiting for his answer. Seeing the anticipation in the little girl's eyes, Lu Benlai suddenly felt a little heartache. Could it be that this little girl came from a single-parent family and didn't have a father? Is that why she's asking such a question? Lu Benlai pondered for a moment before asking, "What about your mother?" The little girl shook her head. "I can't find her. Alright, it's really as I thought. She got lost." The adults in this little girl's family must be panicking right now, right? With such thoughts in mind, Lu Benlai said, "How about this, little girl? I'll bring you to the nearest police station to look for the police officer, alright?" The little girl shook her head once more. "The police officer can help you find your mother." The little girl shook her head once more. Lu Benlai frowned. If she didn't want to follow him to the police station, what if she cried and threw a tantrum? What if someone thought that she was a human trafficker? But he couldn't possibly go to the police station alone and leave her here, could he? Should he call 110? Just as Lu Benlai was trying to come up with a solution, the little girl suddenly reached out and took out a tag from her neck. She raised it to Lu Benlai's face. Lu Benlai took a look at the tag and saw an address and phone number written on it. Clearly, her parents had given it to the little girl so that she wouldn't lose it. Lu Benlai took out his phone and dialed the number on the tag. It rang many times but no one answered. Seeing that the sky was gradually darkening, Lu Benlai took a look at where the little girl lived, and it wasn't too far away from G University. Thus he said, "Uncle will send you home to look for your mother, alright?" The little girl seemed to be studying something. She stared at Lu Benlai for a moment before nodding her head lightly. With a childish voice she replied, "All right." Lu Benlai's heart softened in an instant. He stood up, intending to bring the little girl to the address, only to realize that the little girl wasn't moving at all. He stared at her in bewilderment for a moment, and just as he was about to ask her what was wrong, she suddenly extended her arms toward him, asking for a hug. A 3-year-old baby couldn't walk anymore. What else could he do? Lu Benlai bent down and picked up the little girl. The little girl was very light and her body was soft. As soon as she fell into his arms, he felt a sharp pain in his heart. Following which, the little girl wrapped her arms around his neck, and the soft and warm sensation made Lu Benlai's heart warm up once more. Lu Benlai froze on the spot for a moment before carrying the little girl to the address. It didn't take long for Lu Benlai to find the little girl's house. He pressed the doorbell and soon anxious footsteps sounded from within. Chapter 1001. Not too long later the door opened from the inside. The one who walked out was a middle-aged woman. Upon seeing the little girl in Lu Benlai's arms, she immediately rushed over and yelled, "Little darling, where did you run off to? Do you know how anxious I was? I've been looking for you for half a day now." Upon seeing the middle-aged woman, the little girl immediately let go of Lu Benlai's neck and opened her arms to the middle-aged woman. With a cute voice she called out, "Grandma, little darling, you mustn't do this in the future. If you run out without saying a word again, Grandma will really get angry. When your mother comes back, I won't care if she scolds you." The middle-aged woman took the little girl from Lu Benlai's arms as she continued to talk to the little girl. The little girl shook her head and said, I don't want Mommy to scold me. As she spoke, she kissed the middle-aged woman on the cheek and said, "Hello, Grandma, Grandma, Grandma." The little girl probably didn't know how to speak that much, and even when she acted coquettishly, she could only utter a few words. However, it was more than enough to soften the middle-aged woman's heart, and the anxious expression on her face softened. However, the middle-aged woman still pretended to be angry and said to the little girl, "You're not allowed to do that in the future." After the little girl nodded obediently, the middle-aged woman turned to Lu Benlai and said, "Sir, thank you so much. Thank you for bringing little darling back." "You're welcome." Lu Benlai raised his wrist to take a look at the time. It was about time for the video conference he had to attend, and he was in a hurry to get back. Without wasting any time with the middle-aged woman, he said, "Since I've brought the child back, I still have some matters to attend to, so I'll be taking my leave first. Let me send you off." The middle-aged woman said as she walked over to the elevator and pressed the button for Lu Benlai. Just as the elevator was about to reach the elevator, the middle-aged woman turned to the little girl in her arms and said, "Little darling, say goodbye to Uncle." The little girl obediently waved her hands at Lu Benlai and said in a tender voice, "Goodbye, Uncle." Those 4 simple words melted Lu Benlai's heart. He instinctively raised his hand and gently stroked her head. In truth, he didn't really like children, but for some reason he just couldn't help but feel an inexplicable urge to get close to this little girl. His hand lingered on her head for a moment before he reluctantly smiled and said, "Little friend, goodbye," before retracting his hand and entering the elevator. After the elevator door closed, the middle-aged woman carried the little girl home. "Darling, Granny will take you to wash your hands first." With that, the middle-aged woman closed the door behind her and carried the little girl to the bathroom. However, before she could take 2 steps, the living room door that had just been closed not long ago was knocked on again. "Auntie? Auntie?" Through the door, the little girl's eyes immediately lit up when she heard the voice coming from outside. "Mommy." Then she twisted her body, slid down from the middle-aged woman's arms and ran to the door. She was short, so she tried her best to tiptoe, but she couldn't reach the doorknob. In the end, a middle-aged woman rushed over and helped her open the door. Chapter 1002. Lung Kiki immediately lowered her head and said, "Mommy, I was wrong. It's like this every time, but you don't listen to me. Mommy, I'm really in the wrong." Lung Kiki said as she snuggled into Lung Wan's embrace. She raised her head and kissed Lung Wan's face. "Mommy, don't be angry. Mommy is pretty, Mommy is pretty." Seeing that Lung Wan wasn't going to hug her, Lung Kiki buried herself deeper into her embrace. "Mommy, I love you." "Mommy." Unable to stand it any longer, Lung Wan sighed helplessly. She reached out to carry Lung Kiki, and as she stood up, she didn't forget to reason with the latter. "Kiki, if you're going out in the future, you can ask Granny to accompany you. If you go out alone, you'll definitely run into bad people. If that happens, you won't be able to see your mother anymore, understand?" When Lung Kiki heard the words, "I won't be able to see my mother again," her eyes immediately turned red. Large droplets of tears fell from the corners of her eyes. "No, I want my mother, I want my mother." "Then you're not allowed to run around alone in the future, understand?" "And then I know." Lung Kiki sobbed as she hugged Lung Wan tightly. After entering the bathroom, when Lung Wan was bathing Lung Kiki, she noticed that the latter was holding onto a golden cufflink. That was something only men would use. Lung Wan frowned. "Kiki, where did you get this thing from?" Lung Kiki stretched out her fair and tender little hands, playing with the water as she replied, "Uncle?" "Oh." Even though Kiki had only said 2 words, Lung Wan knew what she was trying to convey. Since she was young, Kiki had always liked to grab shiny things. If she wasn't mistaken, this cufflink must have been worn by the man who brought Kiki home. The man probably didn't even notice when Kiki reached out to grab it. However, judging from the style and brand of this cuff, it was obviously expensive. Such an expensive thing had to be returned eventually. With this thought in mind, Lung Wan placed the cufflinks into her pocket before bending down to help Kiki wash her hands. After dinner, Lung Wan played with Kiki for a while before coaxing her to sleep. Lung Wan read Snow White thrice before Coco finally fell asleep. After covering Kiki with the blanket, Lung Wan tiptoed out of the bedroom. "Little darling is asleep?" When the auntie saw Lung Wan coming out, she immediately poured her a glass of water. Leng Wan replied with a soft as she took the cup of water. After drinking half a cup, she suddenly recalled the cufflink and raised her head to ask the auntie, "Did the man who sent Cuckoo home today call you?" She was busy at work, so the auntie was the one who took care of Kiki. Most of the phone. Hearing Leng Wan's words, the auntie immediately picked up her phone to take a look. There's a missed call. It should be from the man who sent Nanan back in the afternoon. However, I was downstairs looking for Kiki at that time, so I didn't receive his call. After which the auntie turned to Leng Wan and asked, "Do you want it? Pass it to me." Leng Wan put down the cup of water, picked up her phone, and jotted down the phone number that the auntie had given her. Chapter 1003. By the time he got home and finished his video conference, it was already 11 at night. Lu Benlai took a hot shower to wash away his fatigue before opening a bottle of red wine. He sat on the sofa in front of the floor-to-ceiling window and stared at the night view as he slowly sipped on his wine. Before he knew it, he had already drunk half a bottle of wine. He poured himself another glass of wine and took a sip. Then he reached out and pulled out his personal cell phone. Entering WeChat, he tapped on the lemon that he had pinned at the top. The entire page was filled with messages that he had sent her. He scrolled up the screen until his fingertips were aching, but he didn't see a single reply from her. He knew that her message would only appear on the screen if he scrolled back to 4 years ago. Yet he continued scrolling until he saw her reply from 4 years ago. Only then did he tap into the chat box and start typing. Wan, I swiped the screen 347 times today before I saw your reply. Wan, you've been away from me for 4 years, 1 month and 3 days. Wan, do you still remember? 5 years ago today we went to eat hot pot together. It happened to be your summer break that day, so we went shopping together after eating hot pot. I bought you a beautiful dress. Wan, did you have a good day today? It was still the same. I woke up at 8 in the morning and arrived at the office at 9. I was busy the entire morning, and in the afternoon I met the president of a bank. Seeing that the weather wasn't bad and I happened to be passing by G University, I decided to go for a stroll. G University hasn't changed much from before. Wherever I go, it's as if I can see your shadow. Oh, that's right, I met an especially beautiful and obedient little girl today. She got lost, so I sent her home. Wan, I've said so much, but I don't know if you'll be able to see it. Perhaps you won't be able to see it, but you might be able to see it, but you'll just ignore me after you see it. Wan, I miss you, but I don't know if you'll miss me. Wan, I'm sorry. I can't even remember how many times I've apologized to you. Wan, it's been 1,460 days since you left, but I'm still waiting for you. Wan, I believe that our story is not finished yet. One day we can say long time no see. Staring at Leng Wan's WeChat, Lu Benlai muttered to himself for a long time before finally exiting WeChat. He tapped open his contacts and searched for Leng Wan's phone number. He had lost count of how many times he had dialed it. The reply he got was still the same. Sorry, the number you have dialed is not available. In fact, one day this sentence became, sorry, the number you have dialed does not exist. However, the next day he asked his assistant to register this number at the business office. Chapter 1004. I've already sent the little girl home safely. Is the little girl's family contacting me to express their gratitude? In truth, Lu Benlai didn't think there was a need for that. After all, it was just a simple gesture from an ordinary person. If it had been anyone else, he might have ignored such a message. However, the little girl he saw in the afternoon was simply too adorable and likable. Lu Benlai pondered for a moment before replying, yes, I am. It was already past midnight. Lu Benlai thought that the person who had sent him the message would have already gone to bed and wouldn't be replying to his message for the day. Never in his wildest dreams did he expect that a second after he put down his phone would ring with a ding-dong. Picking up his phone, he saw that it was a message from an unknown number. Sir, I'm sorry to disturb you. It's like this, when I was washing my daughter's hands today, I noticed a cufflink in her hand. It looks like it's quite expensive, so can you give me your address? I'll send it over to you. When he returned home and was changing his clothes, He realized that he had lost a cufflink. He thought that he had accidentally dropped it on the floor. But in the end it turned out that the little girl was the one who had snatched it away. However, he didn't want strangers to know too much about him. After pondering for a moment, Lu Benlai recalled that he had an appointment in the rose garden tomorrow night. Thus he replied, I happen to be having dinner near your neighborhood tomorrow night. If it's convenient, can you deliver the cufflink to my restaurant? Sure, but I might have to work overtime. How about 8:30? Sure. I'll contact you tomorrow night then. Upon seeing this, Lu Benlai didn't respond to the other party's message. The next day at 8 a.m. sharp, Lu Benlai was woken up by his alarm. The first thing he did when he woke up was to brush his teeth while sending Leng Wan a WeChat message. Good morning, Wan Wan. Wan Wan, the weather in Beijing is great today. I wonder where you are and if the weather is good? Wan Wan, remember to eat breakfast. I'm going to work now. It was another busy day. Lu Benlai's original plan was to have an appointment that night, but plans couldn't keep up with the sudden changes. Lu Benlai had to go on a business trip, and his flight was at 9 p.m. that night. He returned home at 6 a.m., hastily packed a few clothes and rushed to the airport. On the way to the airport he kept answering the phone. When he arrived at the airport he finally didn't have to make a phone call, but he had to go through a series of check-in procedures. When he entered the VIP lounge he finally had some free time. At 8:30, the flight attendant reminded him that it was time to board the plane. Just as Lu Benlai was about to leave the VIP lounge with his briefcase in hand, the phone in his pocket suddenly rang. He took out his phone and took a look at the caller ID. It was an 11-digit number and it looked a little familiar. However, Lu Benlai wasn't able to match it to the number. Lu Benlai tapped on the screen and answered the call. After which, he placed the phone to his ear and said, "Hello?" There was no sound from the other end of the line. Lu Benlai waited for a moment before replying with another hello. This time he added a few more words. "Hello, may I know who you are?" There was still silence on the other side of the phone. Through his phone, Lu Benlai could hear the sound of cars passing by as well as the occasional honks. He frowned. Seeing that the other side was still silent, he spoke again, "I'm sorry." Chapter 1005. He frowned, but seeing that there was still silence on the other end he spoke up once more, "I'm sorry. The remaining, may I know who you are? Why aren't you speaking?" Before Lu Benlai could finish his sentence, the other party had already hung up on him. Just like that, the words that Lu Benlai was about to say got stuck in his throat. Hearing the do-do-do-do tone from his phone, he couldn't help but feel a little flustered. Seeing that Lu Benlai wasn't moving, the air stewardess walked over and reminded him, "Mr. Lu, it's about time for you to board the plane." Recovering from his daze, Lu Benlai put his phone away and began making his way to the boarding gate. However, after taking 2 steps he suddenly paused. For some reason he felt that there was more to that call. After a moment of contemplation he took out his phone and gave the other party a call. After the call was connected it rang many times but no one answered. Lu Benlai frowned, and the uneasiness in his heart intensified. After contemplating for 2 seconds he made another call. This time the call went through, but unlike before there was no one picking up. Instead there was a response very quickly, but the other party had already hung up. It was one thing for the other party to remain silent after picking up the call, but when he called the other party didn't pick up either. What was the meaning of this? Lu Benlai wanted to make a third call, but before he could touch his phone screen, a notification popped up on his screen. It was from the unknown number that had called him earlier. "Hello, sir. I'm here to deliver the cufflinks to you. May I know which compartment of the restaurant are you in?" Upon seeing this message, Lu Benlai suddenly realized why he found this number so familiar. It turned out to be the mother of the little girl whom he had sent home yesterday. He had arranged to meet her at the entrance of the restaurant, but he was simply too busy today. After going on an abrupt business trip he had been busy answering calls non-stop, so he had completely forgotten about this matter. Lu Benlai quickly replied, "I'm sorry, but I have to go on an abrupt business trip today, so I won't be able to meet you. Is that so? If it's convenient for you, can you give me an address so that I can mail it to you? Or perhaps you have another contact I can deliver the cufflinks to them." Lu Benlai was the one who had decided to meet Zhang Xian tonight, but he was the one who had broken the appointment. He felt a little embarrassed, so Lu Benlai pondered for a moment before replying, "It's the weekend tomorrow. Are you at home? If you're at home, I'll ask the driver to pick it up at the entrance of your neighborhood. That way it'll save you some trouble. What do you think?" "All right." Lu Benlai didn't respond. He lifted his feet and continued to walk towards the boarding gate. After walking for a short distance, his phone rang again. It was a message from the little girl's mother. "When your driver comes tomorrow, ask him to contact this phone number. This is my auntie's phone number. I promised my daughter tomorrow that I would accompany her to Ocean Park, so I won't be at home. However, I gave the cufflinks to my auntie at home. She's always available." Lu Benlai wasn't in a hurry to reply. Instead, he briefed his driver on the situation, and after the driver informed him of the approximate time he would be heading over tomorrow, he sent a message to the little girl's mother. "The driver will be there at around 3 in the afternoon tomorrow." Chapter 1006. It was only after Lu Benlai boarded the plane that he saw the message. He replied with, "It's fine," before switching off his phone. At the same time, at the entrance of the rose garden, Leng Yuan felt her phone vibrating, and she subconsciously unlocked the screen. When Leng Yuan saw that he only replied after a long while, "It's fine," she finally couldn't hold herself back and her eyes reddened. She had recognized who he was from the very brief hello she had heard from him on the phone. She thought that after such a long time, the people she should have forgotten and the things she shouldn't have remembered were all just a dream to her. But when he suddenly appeared in her world again, she realized that in life, there would always be such a person. You thought you had long forgotten him, but in reality he was still deeply hidden in your heart, and it was even more deeply rooted. She wondered what kind of man would send Coco home. Judging from the cufflinks, he should be a successful man. She also thought that a person who could wear such expensive accessories had to be a middle-aged man who loved children. But never in her wildest dreams could she have imagined that the person would actually be him. Just from his voice alone she was able to recognize him. Lu Benlai. Lu as in Lu Benlai. Benlai as in there's nothing in the world. Where does dust come from? Lu Benlai. There were a total of 19 strokes of these 3 words. Lu Benlai. Leng Yuan's thoughts didn't manage to make their way into her mind. Like a fast-forward scene in a movie, the memories of the past suddenly flashed across her mind like a storm. Recently, Shi Yao had been finding all kinds of snack wrappers in Lin Shi's pocket. Once or twice, Shi Yao thought that Lin Shi might have bought them himself, but as the number of times increased, she gradually realized that something was amiss. After all, the allowance Lin Shi had in his pocket wasn't enough to pay for so many snacks. Lin Shi was only 3.5 years old, so there shouldn't be any major problems. However, Shi Yao was still a little worried that Lin Shi might have used some underhanded means to steal snacks from the other children in the kindergarten. So she asked the kindergarten teacher for an explanation, and the result was that other than his desk mate Leng Kiki, who made him cry every day, Lin Shi didn't seem to have any other problems. Unable to understand the situation from the teacher, Shi Yao decided to find a time to have a heart-to-heart talk with Lin Shi. Shi Yao had to attend classes and she was quite busy as well. Thus she found a weekend to do so. However, before she could have a heart-to-heart talk with Lin Shi, she first had to get rid of him, who would surely cause trouble if she were to spend too much time with her son. The reason Shi Yao used was, "Hubby, I want to eat jellies, potato chips, popcorn, fruit candies, lollipops, preserved fruits, candied plums, crispy noodle snacks, biscuits, bubble gum, chewing gum, puffed snacks, creamed melon seeds, peanuts, walnuts, toffee, sesame paste, wangzai milk, broad beans, orchid beans, pistachios, walnut kernels, almonds, hazelnuts, beef jerky, pork cubes, grilled fish fillets, seaweed, shredded squid, shrimp sticks, raisins, figs." At the end, Shi Yao added, "The reward for buying these things is a kiss." "Is it from Mom? I didn't steal it from the kids. I don't want to steal from them." Shi Yao was silent for a moment before asking, "Why did you say that it's beneath your dignity to snatch a child's belongings?" Didn't mommy tell you to be friendly with your friends? You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.